Hey everybody, this is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer, and welcome to a new episode. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make, they're real easy, these random foam dungeon tiles. These are individually cut foam tiles that are glued onto chipboard. They're very inexpensive to make, they really look good, but they are a little time intensive. So let's get to the tabletop and let me show you how you can make your own. All right, before I start a project like this, I usually make myself a little checklist. What I've got here is 6 hallways that are going to be 2 inches by 6 inches, 4 hallways of 2 by 2, and 4 hallways of 1 by 2. For rooms, I'm going to do 3 3 by 3s, 4 4 by 4s, 6 6 by 6s, 4 8 by 8s, and 2 12 by 12s. And this is a 12 by 12 right here, this single sheet of chipboard. So the first thing I need to do is I'm going to go ahead and time-lapse this. I'm going to get all these things cut out. When I cut them out, I'm going to write their size on the back just so I kind of remember. And then I'll get them ready for the foam stonework. All right, so after doing all that cutting, I ended up with 4 2 by 6s, 4 2 by 2s, and 4 1 by 2 hallways. For rooms, I ended up with some extras. There are now 4 3 by 3s, 7 4 by 4s, 4 6 by 6s, 2 8 by 8s, and 2 12 by 12s. And because of some of the unusual cuts, I ended up with 2 8 by 12s and 3 4 by 8s. So this is a nice mix of shapes. Obviously, if you want some unusual shape, you'll have to put some together, you know, like this to make a L-shaped room and things like that. But what I'm going for here is just some basic foam tiles that can be put together real quick for a quick dungeon crawl. Specifically, I'm going to be using these for a game I'm playing called 5 Leagues from the Borderlands. But let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to point the camera down to the tabletop, and I'm going to show you how I make stones out of foam for all of these pieces. And believe me, it's going to be a lot of foam and a lot of cutting and a lot of stones. So let's get to it. For this project, I'm going to be using 1/4 inch XPS foam. This is the insulation foam you can get from most hardware stores. I have a ton of this as scrap, but they do sell it when you can find it. They do sell it in big sheets. Usually it's either 4x4 or like 4x8, and you'll have to cut it down to size. Now I'm going to be using my Proxxon foam cutter. If you don't have one of these, you can still do this project. It's just you're going to have to use a blade, and you're going to have to be more careful with your fingers. What the Proxxon's going to allow me to do is cut a lot of different widths and heights or thicknesses for the, well, let me rephrase that. All of the bricks that I'm going to use for these tiles, they're all going to be 1/4 inch tall. Now, normally when I make flooring, I like to have the tiles different thicknesses. It gives us this nice stone, this sort of uneven surface, almost like cobblestone. But for these, I don't want the miniatures like tipping over, you know, on an irregular surface. So I'm going to keep them all at 1/4 thickness, and I'm just going to vary the length and the width of the brick. I'm going to need a ton of bricks. How many? Well, I used, I think, 7 of these 12 by 12 sheets. So 12 by 12 is 144 square inches. Multiply that by 7, you're looking at about, 700 plus 200, about 900 plus square inches. I'm doing the calculations in my head right now. So you're going to need a lot. Basically, you're going to need 7 12 by 12 sheets of 1/4 inch wood, right? If you were to just glue this down like as is, that's how many I would need to cover all these chipboard pieces that I've cut. So I've got maybe a 9 by 9 piece here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a lot of bricks, but I'm going to do them in batches. So for right now, randomly, I'm going to set this to whatever this is, about 12 centimeters. And I'm just going to run this through and just create a whole bunch of long strips of foam. And then once I have the strips cut, I'll turn them lengthwise and cut them into smaller bricks. And again, I'm going to need so many bricks. I don't know how many I'm going to need, but what I'm going to try to do is do 4 or 5 of these at a time. Right now I'm cutting the height of the brick, right? In just a moment, I'll rotate these and cut the length of them. And again, they're all going to be 1/4 inch thick. So after I cut, say, 5, I'll change the height of the brick by moving the fence back a little bit, making the brick a little taller, or I can move it closer to the wire and make the brick a little smaller or shorter. And I'm just going to cut a whole bunch of these, and then I'll vary the length. So I just cut a bunch. Let's just call that 12 centimeters. I'll turn this off. I'm going to move this back to, say, almost 20. And now I'm going to cut a bunch, about 4 or 5 of these strips, and these are a little taller. That's probably as tall as I'm going to go. So I'm probably going to have to move closer to, well, actually, I may make some a little bit bigger for the bigger rooms. We shall see. But let's see, what is that? 2, that's 2. And this is, honestly, this is the tedious part. It's tedious whether you have a Proxxon or tedious whether you're using a blade. Now, if you're using a blade, you just cut strips like what I'm doing here, but, you know, be careful, watch your fingers, and just cut a bunch of strips lengthwise, and then you'll rotate them and cut them to size. So that's 4, and here's 5. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to switch over to time-lapse so you don't see me cut thousands and thousands of bricks. But before I do that, let me show you one last thing. This is what I'm going to do. When I'm done, I'm going to have, like, for instance, here are 5 of the thicker ones, and here are 5 of the thinner ones, right? I'm going to have so many variations of this, of the height of the brick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the fence to a certain length. And I'm going to take, say, 2 of these and run them through, 2 of the thicker ones, I'm going to run them through and just make a bunch of bricks. But without changing the height of the brick, excuse me. Now, considering these are going to be floor tiles, I guess that would be length times width. Yeah, it'd still be the length times width, not height of the brick, since they're going to be on the floor. The height is all going to be 1/4 inch, right, since they're going to be glued flat. So I cut a bunch of these, and I'm going to jump, and then I'm going to take 2 of the thin ones, the thinner ones, and I'm going to run them through. So I'm going to have a bunch of bricks that are different lengths, but the same width. And then I'm going to have different and I'm going to have a lot of variation of bricks. And this is just going to take some time. So sit back, enjoy the time lapse as I go and I create thousands and thousands of bricks. All right, I've cut quite a bit of foam, but believe me, this is probably enough to just cover the 6x6, this, what is that, 3x3, 3x3, and this 2x6 here. That's just my guess. It may cover a little more. So what I've done is I've taken out 4 different sizes just so you can see how this is going to work. And what we're going to do is we're going to be gluing these on randomly onto your tiles. Now, obviously, you don't want to do them at an angle. You want to sort of keep them perpendicular and parallel to the 4 edges of your square. You could do it like that easily, but it's going to get kind of confusing, and when you start matching up the tiles later for gameplay, it's going to be a little odd if you have a mix of angled and straight. So if you're going to do them angled, you got to do the angle the same across all your tiles, which means draw a line from one corner to the other to make a 45-degree angle, and then start at that line so that all your tiles will be roughly at the same angle. But I'm not going that crazy. Before we start gluing these pieces of tile, however, we need to roughen them up. Now, before I cut them, I could have taken some aluminum in a crushed ball and rolled it over the surface. And what that does is it makes the surface very rough so that when you prime and paint it, it'll look sort of like stone. But I can do that later once they're glued down and they've dried and they're nice and firm on there. Then I can roll it over. I didn't need to do that at the beginning. But I do need to roughen them up, because after you cut these with a blade or with a Proxxon, you end up with just perfect, sharp, very crisp edges and corners, which maybe that's what you want. I don't. I want these things to look really, really worn. So if you're like me over your lifetime, you've probably collected a nice collection of hex wrenches. And I've got maybe, 20 in here, 15 or 20. I put them in this plastic container. I used to use rocks, and I'll tell you why I stopped using rocks. Because after you shake them up for a while, you start getting this powder inside, and it gets on the foam as well, and it's not good to breathe. I mean, it's very, very fine particulate. So I tried this a while back, and it worked great. You don't need a whole lot of them. Like I said, I've got about 15 in there, and they're different sizes and diameters and stuff like that. But really what they're for is to dull and roughen up the edges. So I seal this. You can hear the noise. I'm going to mute this because I do not want to hurt your ears. But I'm going to shake this for probably about, 30, 45 seconds. I'll look at them and see if I'm happy with them, and if not, I'll shake them some more. Shake until you're happy with it. All right, they are all rough and tumbly. And by the way, if you use this method and you ever need a hex wrench, you're always going to know where to find it. I pretty much guarantee that anytime I need one, the right size is probably going to be in here somewhere. All right, so I am quite pleased with how these turned out. The next thing you want to do is grab some tacky glue. You could use wood glue, but it's not as good for attaching foam to chipboard. You could also use hot glue, although I don't recommend hot glue because it cools quickly, and if you make a mistake or don't like something, you have to pull it off and it can rip the foam. What tacky glue gives you is a few minutes before it really starts to set, where you can play with pieces, and if you don't like it, you can pull them off and you won't damage the foam or the chipboard. But it does take a while to dry, which is the drawback to tacky glue versus, say, hot glue. But again, you use what you like or what you have on hand. Now, you're going to start placing these on the tile after you put some glue on. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. Just reach in, grab a few pieces, put them down, reach in, grab a few pieces, and keep going. At some point, you may notice something odd, and you may look for a specific size piece to sort of break up. Maybe you have a whole bunch of little ones in a corner or something. But overall, you need to not think about it. Now, what I like to do is take a piece and completely cover in tacky glue, and you're going to use your finger here. And remember, the tacky glue is not going to dry super quick. All right, you're going to have a little bit of time for this, so don't worry about using some of the. Now, for the 12 by 12, I might do that in sections, but for these smaller pieces, you definitely can just do it all at once, and then just spread your finger. Use your finger to kind of get the tacky glue to all the corners. Now, one thing you're not going to do here is you're not going to work towards the edge and try to stop at the edge. If you go over the edge, that's okay. As a matter of fact, that's going to be I had to get a paper towel, sorry. That's going to be the best thing to do, because once the glue has dried, then you can go and flip it over and trim them flush to the edges, and it'll look good. Trust me. All right, so now I have this piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one big piece in the middle, and then I'm just going to start putting pieces down. And you want to try to leave a little bit of a gap. You can butt these right up against each other, because the uneven edges of them are going to make the grout lines. So you're not going to lose that if you put it right. I mean, if you press them together really tight, you're still going to have a grout line because of the uneven edges. And then just start dropping pieces in. Try to go, just reach out and grab something, and always try to keep that orientation. Now, what's going to happen eventually is you're going to reach a point where you have a gap that you can't fit anything in. Ignore it for now. Now you could turn a piece sideways, like I'm going to do here, and fit it in. And it's slightly higher than the piece next to it, but not so high that it would tip a miniature over. This is art, not science. So you're just going to have to play it by ear and figure out what works for you. Try to use a mix of small and large. Just don't think about it. Just place, place, place. And this is going to, and if you're sort of random about it, it's going to show. You're going to notice that you really like the end result. I've done this enough that I'm starting to really enjoy the unusual look of it. The first time I did it, I really wasn't, when it finished, I wasn't sure. I was like, man, do I really like that? But once it was painted and weathered, oh, I was so happy with how it turned out. And again, you want to just make sure you grab a mix of pieces. See how I'm starting to speed things up? I'm not really thinking about it right now. I'll come back and fill in gaps and things later. And how do you do that? Well, it's real easy. You cut a piece with a blade to fit that gap. Squeeze it with your fingers to rough it up a little bit. Don't worry about the stonework. You can roll that over later, and just cut a piece to custom fit where you need it. What you definitely want to try not to do is make 4 corners meet. And what I mean by that is don't take 4 pieces and glue them so that you end up with, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but you don't want 4 pieces meeting at the same point because it just won't look right. Now, if you do that, if you like the look of that, you have to do it with everything, which is kind of defeats the purpose. At that point, what you probably want to do is just do same size bricks and just do a level and then a level and then a level and then a level. For this particular kind right here, you're going to want to mix it up. And if you have to force something down in, if you have to kind of squeeze it or shape it with your fingers, that's okay. I mean, it's gonna make the stone look a little uneven, and that's what you want. When this is all painted, it's gonna look like it was just haphazardly put together. And again, notice I'm not working towards the edge. If it goes off the edge, like right there, no biggie, because when I finish, when this glue is dried, I will flip it over and trim all the overhang. And just we're almost done with this piece. Now, one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do every piece on camera for you because honestly, I just don't want to force you to have to watch that. That would be kind of boring. So I'm going to do a few. I'm going to time-lapse a few of these, and then I'll get to the priming and painting, and you'll see off camera I'm going to finish up all these. It may take a while, but that's okay. I've got the time, and I want them to look good. The other thing you're not going to see is how many of these piles of foam I make. It's going to be a lot. So join me for the next time lapse. I'm going to start that now. All right, I have got all of these tiles glued up. How many do I have? Well, probably close to 20, maybe more. This is about half. That's about half of what I have. The other half is sitting over here. So what comes next? Well, now that all of the foam tiles have been cut randomly, weathered by shaking them up in this little box that I've got with some hex wrenches, and I've glued them all on with tacky glue. Now the bigger ones, they tend to warp. I don't know if you'll be able to see. There's a slight warp in this, but honestly, you can just sort of bend it back. Bill, or Wylock, he recommends putting glue on the back, and it'll fix it. But I've never really had any trouble with just once the glue is good and dry, you just sort of bend it back and it stays in place. So what comes next is all of these, if you look on the back, there's a lot of overhang. And I do that because I don't want these perfect little, you want to sort of have this grow from the center out without any kind of patterns. I like the randomness of it. And in order to do that, it means I have to use pieces that are going to extend beyond the border of, like in this instance, this is a 3x3. So some of them have gone over. So all I'm going to do right now is take all of these, and there's a lot of them, and I'm going to trim them to size. Now, after that, there's various ways you can do this. You could coat these first in a Mod Podge to toughen them up and then paint them. You could mix black paint in with Mod Podge to do a sort of a base coat of black, but also give it that Mod Podge hardness when it dries. You could just go blast them with black paint, paint them, and then cover them with Mod Podge. There's a lot of different options here, and that last one's the one I'm going to do. I'm going to black bomb these. All of these will be given a coat of black paint. And this is going to be part 2 of the video, mainly because I don't want this video to go super long. So in this video, I'm going to wrap it up by trimming these all down. But in the next video, you're going to see my process for black bombing them, getting them the colors that I want. It's not going to be just flat gray. And then I'm going to give all of them a coat of Mod Podge so that they will stay durable and last for a while. So let's get to the tabletop and let me get cutting. All right, the cutting is done. Before I forget, you're going to have a lot of cutoff here. This is actually not bad to keep. I could use this to fill in some of the smaller gaps if I find that I don't like some. The other thing is, occasionally when you're cutting, you may accidentally pull a piece off, like I've done here. So it's just a simple matter of putting a little glue, fix it again, let the glue dry, and then trim it again. This happened to like maybe, I think, 3 or 4 of them. You can see one here. It just meant I didn't get it glued as well as I thought. So set those aside, and those are the ones you'll want to come back to make little repairs before you start painting. So let me just show you. I've got a 12x12 here, which I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I will tell you that these are labor intensive. It probably, I've got maybe 20 to 25 tiles here of various sizes. They go from the 12x12 down to small little, break-offs or hallways like that. And out of all of them, I've got some little 2x2s, some 3x3s. Here's another repair that needs to be done. Got some hallways. They look awesome. I love them. They are labor intensive. I spent probably a total of an hour just cutting the foam, and I didn't do it all at once. I did like maybe 7 or 8 tiles, and then I'd cut some more, but total time to make everything you see here, all of these tiles right here, probably about an hour to make about 20, and these are all random sizes. So in addition to the 1 hour of cutting the foam, then you have to glue it. And gluing, as you saw in the video, it's not bad. You just get a lot on there, use your finger to smooth it out, and then just start placing. What I find is that for the larger ones, you really need to do them in sections, because even though the tacky glue dries slow, if you try to do this whole thing in tacky glue and then start, it gets a little messy. Do a little bit at a time. Here I did a corner at a time. And one recommendation, if you want to make sure that you have this random nature and you can't see any particular patterns in it, kind of like this one, what I do, and I don't have any spares here to show you, but if you have the time, separate out your bricks into large, medium, and small. All right. Now, for a medium tile like this, you're probably only going to want 4 or 5 big tiles. You're going to want more medium tiles, and then the smaller ones to fill in the gaps. So what I did was I covered this entire thing with glue. I picked 4 or 5 big ones. Looks like a 3 here. 1, 2, 3. And I put them down. Then I grabbed a bunch of maybe 10 to 15 mediums, and I put those down. And what you do is work your way smaller. start with the large ones, but don't go crazy putting too many large ones on there. Just put a small number and then work your way down to the smallest, tiniest little brick you can to fill in the little areas. And if you do it right, you end up with a nice little random pattern that, or a nice little randomness that will not have a pattern. All right, now what I've got to do is get these things black bombed and painted, and that's going to take some time, so that's why I'm breaking this into 2 videos. I hope you enjoyed this. It's definitely, if you can make tiles in so many different ways. You could just get a big piece of foam and just cut tiles into it with a blade. You could use Bill's new technique, which I absolutely thought was crazy, which is to use a soldering iron or a heating element, and he actually like drew in cracks and things like that. I'd never thought of that option. I don't know what, I don't think it would ruin your soldering iron, but it is just like this. It's probably a little time intensive. But for me, I have really enjoyed having, when I started out doing tiles, I did what everybody does. I cut, horizontal lines, and then I cut vertical lines to give it a brick pattern, and then I used a pen to separate it. And it works. It'll do fine for you in a pinch, especially if you don't have a lot of time or you don't want to spend a lot of time on your terrain. But here years and years later, I'm still running D&D campaigns. I'm still running OSE, Old School Essentials. I've just started running some Old School Essentials campaigns. And I wanted some dungeon tiles that really, that would endure. I could throw them down and not worry about them breaking. That's why I'm going to use the Mod Podge. But I also wanted it to look handmade. I wanted the tiles to have a real, authentic, handmade look. And so it remains to be seen. We'll get these painted up and see what they look like. But so far, I'm really liking what I see. I especially like the texture. Really like the uneven texture. There's raises and lowering of tiles, not significant, not enough to tip over a miniature, I believe, but enough that you definitely, from an angle, you can see that it is not one piece of foam. It is small pieces of foam that have been individually cut and put down here. You can use a Proxxon to cut these, or you can do them by hand. Either way, it's still going to be a little time intensive, so just be aware of that if you decide to go this route. All right, that's all I have for this week. This is Jim, the Tabletop Engineer. I'll be back next week with the follow-up video where we'll get these things painted. Until then, everybody, take care.